Hello, my name is Mary Ann Barnett, and I am the transition coordinator for outreach services for the deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind. Thank you for watching this segment of our virtual job interview. Today, I have the honor and privilege of introducing to you Erika Eykmans, who works for Goodwill Industries of southeastern Wisconsin and northeastern Illinois. But today she's going to present to us about creating a resume. Anybody who wants to work probably needs to have a pretty good resume, something eye-catching with the correct information. So I'm going to let Erika take it away.
Okay, so for creating a resume, I think it's just a really good skill to have in your back pocket. So even if you feel like you don't have anything to put on a resume, my thought is that there's something, we can explore and figure something out so that you can have a resume to apply for jobs, apply for schools, internships. There are tons of opportunities out there. So, kind of the basics, that you want to really make sure you include on there are your name, an email address, making sure it's an appropriate email address. So sometimes we make email addresses for fun and they might be silly, but even just having one that you specifically use for job interviews and applications can just be really helpful. And two, it also helps you kind of uh, uh, separate it out from your personal emails so that you don't get them confused. Also, a phone number so that they can contact you, and your location of where you are. Some people put their exact addresses, and if that's something you want to do, you definitely can. But I always recommend at least putting the city and state that you live in, so that the employer knows that you're close by. So, I think a big part of a resume is really just a list of your accomplishments. So, it doesn't always have to be about work, it can be about school, any training that you've had, any volunteering, even if it's just one day, that you volunteered and helped out with something. Otherwise, any awards that you've received in school, extracurricular activities, sporting events, anything that might stand out and just tell a little bit more about you and who you are as a person. Obviously, if you have previous work experience, those formal jobs that you've had, that's important to list, including the dates, the company, the position, and then kind of a list of the different responsibilities, duties, or tasks that you did while you were working at that location. And there's also something to be said about some more informal work experiences. So if you mow lawns, shovel snow, um, take care of children, maybe cousins or family members or friends, or even animals. Those are all things that kind of show your work ethic, your character, and two, that you can take on some responsibility. So putting those things in your resume is always a great idea, just to show the employer, one, that you are a hard worker, and two, that you're thinking out of the box. So oftentimes at the top of a resume, there's a summary. And this isn't always required for a resume, but sometimes with individuals who maybe feel like they don't have a lot to put on their resume, this can be a great place to kind of talk about who you are as an employee. So you might talk about some goals that you have. Maybe that you plan on going to college, or you have a certain type of career goal, and then you can tailor it to the type of job that you're looking for to explain why this might be a stepping stone to get you there. Or, even something as simple as that you're looking for some work experience. You can put that kind of in this summary, um, and that way an employer gets a little bit of a better sense of who you are. You don't want to just list everything that you already have in your resume in that area, because they're going to go on to read that. So any kind of other information that you think would be beneficial for an employer to know. So for references, in general, you want your resume to just be 1 page long. And if you feel like it's not quite filled up enough, sometimes having references can be a great way to take up some space. But also, a lot of jobs will request references anyways. So that way it's right there in front of them and you don't have to later provide that information. I always think that 3 is a safe number. If you don't have 3, that's okay. List the ones that you do have, but any more than 3, you can always provide that additional information to the employer if needed. So, in general, references should not be friends or family. They should be more so people that can speak to your character in a more professional kind of setting. So, teachers, mentors, coaches, bosses, anybody that really can speak to your character that isn't a friend or a family member. So the magical power words in a resume. So it really adds the sense of quality and professionalism to a lot of the work that you do, and that you have done, and whether that's volunteering in school, in sports, or extracurricular activities. So for example, saying made and served food at the local soup kitchen. So try using these power words. So prepared and distributed food to those in need at a local soup kitchen. Those words just kind of bring more power to your resume, and it like I said, it brings this sense of professionalism, and shows that you can really be a good employee in the workplace. You can do even just a simple Google search of power words for resumes and they'll give you just a whole list. So Google's a tool, use it to your advantage, and figure out different synonyms for words so that it sounds more professional. So what else? So a resume, like I said before, I generally think that it should just be 1 page long. Take up that full page, if you can, but also know that this is a living document. So as you gain more experience, as you graduate, complete trainings, start new jobs, you can continue to add on to this. And once you start to build your work history or your experiences, you may be able to pull certain things out, maybe that don't necessarily apply to the type of job that you're looking for at that time. So I always say, keep a resume with everything on it, and then you can pull from that and create, almost more particular, specific resumes for certain employers.
So if you wanted to work in, say, a restaurant, keeping those soup kitchen volunteerisms would be a good thing. But if you wanted to work in a different kind of an industry, maybe the other volunteerisms that you do.
Right. Exactly. So that way you're kind of able to hand pick, what's appropriate for this type of job, what applies.
Mhm.
And then your resume stands out more to the employer because you're picking those specific types of work.
And on the PowerPoint you're showing us, it's a very neutral off-white color, and there's very minimal distracting add-ons in it. Is that also recommended? What about color? What about a purple background or a green background and with flowers in the corner? Are these things looked at in a positive way, or because they're more casual and cute would not be as would not be looked at as professionally? What's your
Yeah. So, in general, I think employers are really looking for that professionalism. And I think sometimes a lot of color, a lot of graphics, silly fonts, can take away and distract from the actual content that's on the resume. So I know it seems boring, but keeping it basic is really important to really more effectively communicate to the employer. Now, even if you're looking to go to art school or do some sort of graphic design type of job, you'll have a resume that's kind of basic and boring. And then you'll have an art portfolio of all of your artistic work. So knowing that, that this is to embody your professional experiences and your personal experiences that have led you to applying for this position. So I have an example of just kind of an entry level resume for just a made up student that is in college or that is just graduating from high school. So I will bring that up quickly. Okay. So here, the contact information on the top. So you want to make sure that your name is what stands out. Again, you can put your full address, but at least the city and state that you're living in, and then your contact information. Something basic with your name in the email, is going to just not be distracting to the employer. So this summary that I put in here. So a recent high school graduate, which kind of shows where she's currently standing. Looking to grow my skills and abilities in a professional setting. So then this next sentence here, just because I work for Goodwill, I just put that this person is applying at a Goodwill store. And so Goodwill's values to support and help others align with my own, and I believe I would be a great addition to the team. So kind of tailoring it specifically to the employer and saying like, hey, I did my research. I looked up your company. Here's what you value. I also think that's important. And, and I think this is going to be a great start for me in terms of my work experiences. If you don't have any formal work experience, I always recommend starting with education on the top, because that's going to be, the most rewarding, and easily explain maybe why you don't have some of that work experience that they're looking for. And if you do have that work experience, definitely start with that. But I do recommend separating out your work experience from any volunteer or, like pet sitting, volunteering at a soup kitchen or taking care of, cousins or whatnot. So just have, remember the power words. So established, responsible for obtaining, maintaining relationships. You want to use those powerful words to help make your resume stand out. Again, something else that you can put on here if you feel like you need to take up some more space is skills. So things maybe based on your experiences or based on technology, other skills that you have. If you're fluent in multiple languages, or you know Google Drive, or you're really familiar with Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Excel, putting that in there can definitely help you stand out. And then awards and achievements. So any sort of clubs or organizations that you're a part of, you can put on here. If you don't have that, this could be a place where you put those references, potentially that you might have. But in general, you see kind of the boringness almost of it, but it doesn't detract from any of the content on here. It helps the employer to focus on areas that they see you fitting into their organization. So they see, oh, she's been doing pet sitting, and we're really looking for somebody who's friendly with animals, because we have a lot of animals come into the parks. So I think she would be a great fit, and focusing on that, so that, so that way it's clean, it's professional, and it's organized.
I like it. I like that you said keep it to the one page, and it's not overly cluttered, the page either. Do you recommend a certain size font, or not, or between a certain size fonts? Because sometimes,
Yeah.
might have to print it a little bigger because there really isn't all that much.
Right. Yep. And I wouldn't go probably much bigger than like size 14 for some of the stuff on here. The headings and whatnot can be a little bit bigger than that, but I always recommend that your name is the biggest size font on there, because you do want that to stand out. And so that way if somebody's looking through and they're like, oh yeah, Michelle, she was the one that was a child care provider during that time. But yeah, I would say probably no bigger than 14, and also probably no smaller than 12. So I would say using size 12 or 14 font is going to be best, because especially if you print out size 10 or an 8 font, it's really small, and
Yep.
people, if it's not a virtual document, where you can zoom in on it, having that information on there so small, might might almost be a distraction from the work that you're trying to show.
You have another sample with somebody that's maybe had a little bit more work experience. This one's lovely, and it's very it reminds me of any student who's going after their first job. I don't think anything on here was a paid position for longer than like a one-time thing here and there. Pet sitting is going to be occasional. Childcare is going to be an occasional. Even if you've done it for your whole high school career, it's still not an official collect a paycheck kind of a job.
Right.
And that's what this one reminds me of. So do you have another sample with somebody who has had some work experience maybe?
I don't, but I can kind of show you how you might add it to this one.
Great.
So kind of what I do is, okay, so maybe this student then got a job and worked for a couple months at a Goodwill store. So generally what I'll do is, again, the whole idea of adding on to the the current resume that you already have. That way you have that main document that's a culmination of all of your experiences. Um, so right here, I might do work experience then. Or another thing that people do is related experience. So if you have some work and some volunteer experiences that are very specific to the job that you want to do, you might move some things around and put
Mhm.
those under there. But for the sake of this, I'll just put work experience. And then we'll put Goodwill retail in this same made up town of Arlington, Wisconsin. And we'll say June of 2020 to present. Maybe she's still working in this role, but looking for another job or looking to apply for college or something like that. I know that when I applied for college, they asked for my resume. So it's good to just have one, even if you're maybe not actively looking to start work yet, because sometimes once you get a little bit further along, you forget some of the experiences that you've had. So it's good to start documenting them early. So you might, put, maintained a clean and organized, I could type, workspace. Ensured, or I guess this is present. So you want to make sure you put it in the right tense. Ensure customer satisfaction throughout experience in the store. Maybe you assist customers in finding products looking for, and might kind of depend on the type of work, but just kind of thinking about some of that. And also another good thing, another great tool that you can use on Google is, looking up the specific responsibilities or duties for a certain type of job, and it might give you some ideas, because you might think like, I don't know, I just like handle cash and credit card transactions at the counter. But then somebody may have put some good things, and you're like, oh yeah, I have done that, I am cross trained to do that. Or oh yeah, I didn't even think that was technically a responsibility that I had, but now that you say it, that makes sense. And I should put that in my resume because it's going to show a different skill set that I have.
And you also said just now, for under the work experience, if it's a job that you're currently working, to keep that paragraph in the present tense, whereas those volunteerisms that maybe are past tense, keep all that in the past tense when writing about them.
Mhm. Yep. So for example, you can see here that, this one is an experience that's no longer being done currently. So provided childcare for several families. While in the present, act as a weekend holiday volunteer manager. Or for this one's a little bit confusing because it says established. But the business was established, by this person, but then they run it presently.
I like the one under the soup kitchen volunteer because you mentioned that that they're working and volunteering their time during the weekends and holidays, including Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter, which I think an employer would find favorable because a lot of times youth don't want to work the weekends and especially the holidays. And in anything in the retail realm or within hospitality, restaurants and hotel kind of work, all those holidays and weekends are going to be necessary times for those employees to be working.
Right. Yeah. So it can definitely kind of set you apart.
One kind of looks like it would be, it would not, it would not be a strain. It's something that they're already doing.
Right. Yeah. So then you kind of look and, oh, you added a work experience, and now it's going on to a second
Second
page.
page. So now what?
So this is where you can kind of get creative. Some people you may want to, for your skills, instead of listing them in a row, this was done interestingly. You may just list it in a line, maybe separated by commas. You may also just take out this skills section completely. Another thing that you can do, so I'll kind of put that down there. So another thing that you can do is, you may also do this, just to kind of give yourself some more space there. But maybe you want to take out the skills part because most of the skills that you have in there, you already talk about it in your resume. So you take that out and, oh, perfect. Now it's one page. But you can always shorten some of the responsibilities or content in some of these, especially if they don't apply to the job in particular that you're looking for. So if Michelle here is applying for, like, maybe she's been working retail, but she wants to try out food service. So maybe what she'll do, she'll want to keep her work experience because that's going to be really important for the employer to see that she is employable, and that she's currently working. So that transition is going to be smoother. But maybe she'll take out, some of this pet sitter experience so that it shortens it up a bit and brings it back onto a one page. That way you're keeping all this soup kitchen volunteer experience because that's going to be what's most specifically related to the job. And there might be, if she gets another job and more is added, she might take out this childcare provider, position because maybe it doesn't apply to what she's the types of jobs that she's looking for at this point.
And I like on the top where you had mentioned Goodwill in the summary at the very top. I like that you'd mentioned the name of the company where you're seeking employment. And so that, to me, that shows them that it looks like you made that resume just for them.
Right.
I like that it's personalized like that, because then you can have the next one in the same folder that's for, the restaurant place, or for, the childcare place that you want to work, but each one would have the specific name of
Mhm.
the company or the business that you're interested in. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just shows that you kind of you took that extra step. And whether or not it took 30 seconds of your time to do a quick search and make this small adjustment, it's going to
Mhm,
make the employer feel like this is a job that you really, really want,
mhm.
and that you put in that extra time and effort to do that. So I always think that that's a great starting point. For a resume, especially if you don't have a ton of experience, then you can elaborate on that even further if that's something that you're interested in.
Would you suggest to students who are doing this to have someone else proofread their resume before they send it out, such as a parent or a teacher, to look for any potential grammatical errors or improvements, so that they pick that power word rather than the more casual term?
Right. Yep. I think that's always great. Even I still have somebody look over my resume, if I'm making adjustments to it. I think because it is a living document, the chances of there being a mistake are high. So you want to make sure that, that other set of eyes that hasn't been staring at it for, the past 15, 20 minutes can look at it with a totally fresh perspective and say, hey, this looks good, this doesn't, let's change the wording on this. It's confusing to me. And two, I think it's also important to maybe if you're first kind of starting out to write a resume, to ask somebody for help. In terms of thinking about experiences, whether that's a parent or a teacher, or a family member or something, if you've helped people move before, include that in there. But asking is going to help you uh, really realize how much that you have actually done that's outside of just those formal work experiences you often associate with a resume.
All fabulous information.
Mhm.
The bulk of our viewers who are going to be watching this are going to be youth who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf blind, as well as their families and or their educational teams.
Mhm.
And oftentimes a teacher will teach this in, a futures planning class, or, transition kind of a class, and they hear it from the same person over and over. So it's nice that we're seeing it from another person who is out working and who is going to be looking at these resumes and potentially be the
Mhm.
hiring person.
Yeah, and it's just something that's kind of interesting is that so Indeed, it's a job application kind of system. They have a bunch of postings from places all over the U.S. and maybe even the world. I'm not sure, but you can create a profile on Indeed and kind of input all of this information, and Indeed will create a resume for you. I've seen a lot of people try to use that as a resume, and it just doesn't look as crisp and clean as if you do one yourself through Microsoft Word, through Google Doc, through whatever, because Indeed is kind of throwing all the information in there. There are often um, it often looks a little bit less organized. It's usually longer than a page because everything is kind of on to the next line. So just be careful with that. On websites like Indeed, where you can have a profile, you can also upload your own resume. So just remember that you can do that and that you don't have to let it create one for you, because the one that you create with the help of your friends, your family, your teachers, is going to look better than the one that they try to give you.
Um, can the one that is on their website be used kind of like a template? Does it have the same kind of categories like you used, with summary and education and work experience? Like,
Yes, sometimes. Generally, it's difficult to edit it.
ah,
The one that it creates for you, so you can almost use it as like a guide.
okay,
Um,
yeah.
but but you wouldn't be able to like edit that specific document, because I think it comes up as like a PDF, making it a bit more difficult to transfer onto a Word document or a Google Doc to be able to edit and whatnot yourself.
Fabulous. Do you have any words of advice for these young people who want to create resumes and get jobs and get going and get out in the world? What's some Erica advice for them?
Yeah. So I have a couple things. The first one is follow up. So if you apply for a job and you don't hear anything, call. Um, Send an email, stop in. Better, best yet, stop in, and ask. Try to talk to somebody about it, because
Mhm.
oftentimes it becomes, especially if there's not a dedicated hiring manager, it falls on the duties of a manager who's already extremely busy. You showing up and showing interest or giving a call to remind them is going to take you a step ahead a lot of the other candidates who are just going to sit on putting that application in and waiting to hear back. So be proactive. Another thing too is during the interviewing process, I think it's really important to ask questions yourself. I know you're being interviewed, but also, this is an opportunity for you to learn about that employer, that work environment, to see if it really is a good fit. So the interviewer also has to be interviewed. So asking questions, as simple as why do you like your job is going to give you a lot of insight in terms of what that work culture is like, and if that person likes their job. So um that's just some advice that I have, and I've found to be really helpful and beneficial. But also one last thing, if you apply for a job and you don't give it, don't give up. The job market is tough, so just kind of keep fighting, keep persisting, and you will find something that's going to work out for you.
Fabulous. And in your own words, do you have any questions to ask of outreach services?
No, I don't think so.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for your experience, for your expertise. And I hope that our audience has learned how to create a beautiful and individual resume.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Good luck, everyone.